Speaking of timeliness, I think all of our policies are probably um, organized around what we call the 90-day rule, right? That seems to be pretty universal rule for in many areas, and particularly when it comes to the definition of timeliness. I think, from all the years that we have attended national conferences, the 90-day rule seems to be one of the steadiest rules. At Harvard, we have a unique definition, and that may be shared with others, but our definition of 90 days is not 90 days from the original charge, but 90 days from the 15th of the following month. The reasoning behind it is at Harvard, our months close within 5 business days into the next month. So in order to begin the clock, we wait for the previous month to be closed. And that's when our 90-day clock starts ticking. The reason why it's 15 days is because when it comes to the quarters, it takes 10 business days to close a quarter. So 4 times a year, we close a little bit later. So when OSP was rewriting the policy a few years ago, they had a suggestion to start the 90-day count from the very day that a charge incurred. And the local community, the departmental community, we really resisted that because for us, it made a huge difference between something that was charged on the 1st of the month versus something that was charged on the 30th of the month. And to have a standard start of the count was much more helpful for us because many of us would not review our account actuals until either closer to the end of the month or even after the close of the month. So we decided as a community, it was a little bit of back and forth, but OSP listened to us. And that's also a great example of local units working with the central unit. And we decided to keep our count as historically it was 90 days from the 15th of the following month. In preparation for this discussion group, Susan mentioned that that's not the way the count goes in UNH. So Susan, maybe you can tell us how you guys count 90 days.
Yeah, so we do our 90 days from the end of the month in which the cost was incurred when it hit the general ledger.
So you don't give that 15-day cushion that we have, yeah.
And you've always, was that recent change or?
No, that's always been the case. That's been there forever.
That whether we discussed doing that when we made our revisions. I don't think it's a bad idea, but I don't think we have quite as long of a delay each month. We don't do a hard close every month. So that's probably why we can get our reports in the first few days. What we do, obviously timeliness is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to cost transfers. That, not only do the reports have to be ready, people have to review them, and again, I have experience in the department as well as in the central office. So I know how challenging it can be to be in the department and to get through all of your reports on a timely manner. With centrally, what we struggle with in, how are we monitoring these cost transfers? Our system also recognizes that if it was a federal on either side, it will flag it as a cost transfer. And that's why we use different journal entry rule codes. So we train our staff to only enter it as a journal entry rule code if it meets the certain criteria. So we tell them if it's not going on a debit onto a federal, then it's not a JCTR is what we call them. That's a journal cost transfer. It would be a JZRO. We have our JE6. We have a couple other codes, but so they would put it on a different type of rule code and that gets monitored in a different way. We do, however, have to, there is some review of the other rule codes to make sure that they're doing it correctly. And when the auditors come in, they get everything. We give them the guidance on what we tell folks. So they'll test some that aren't JCTRs to make sure that they actually really did not qualify as a cost transfer. But I find that to be one of the most challenging things because there's such a huge population of journal entries going on and off of grants to really be able to focus in on which ones are the true cost transfers so that we can identify and monitor them, and also so that the auditors know what to look at. Because I don't know about the rest of you, how many times auditors will start pulling journals to test cost transfers, and they're like, well, that's not a cost transfer. That's not a cost transfer. That's within the same grant. That's not a cost transfer. That's just removing a charge. That's not a cost transfer. So we have a lot of that going back and forth. And our policy, we have, I should have counted them, but it's like A through H are exceptions. So even if I think actually one of them it says that it's a credit to a federal. But if it's within the same grant, just from different funds, one fund to another grant, or from one cost category to another grant, we don't consider those cost transfers. There's a whole series of exceptions, and we can